The chamber was shaped like a flower in bloom, 12 petals of polished obsidian curving toward a crystalline dome overhead, beneath which drifted colored orbs that pulsed in sync with the speakers. This was the pinnacle of diplomacy, the famed Galactic Council Hall of Cygna Prime. It reeked of incense, manufactured harmony, and thinly veiled condescension. Ambassador Trillax of the Ralnari Empire reclined in his gravity silk throne, 8 slender limbs folded in what passed for satisfaction. His compound eyes glinted. His voice clicked through the translator crystal, like beetles crawling over bone. "I suppose it is only fair," he said with a theatrical shrug, "that the humans are permitted to express their grief. Their tantrum, catharsis, is, after all, part of their primitive psychology." The council chuckled. Representatives of 36 species, most of them bloated with power or insulated by treaties, nodded or flicked their antennae in agreement. Then, from the rear of the chamber, came a human footstep. Just one, sharp, unapologetic. The chamber dimmed slightly as he approached. Not by design, there was no trigger or command. It simply happened. Light adjusted itself around him like even photons were making room. He wasn't in uniform. No medals, no rank insignia, no powered armor. Just a dark gray tailored suit and a matte black coat that looked civilian, until you noticed the slight bulge at the left hip and the faint glimmer of tactical fiber in the sleeves. Ambassador Eli Vaughn, representing United Humanity, the Council AI intoned. Vaughn stopped at the base of the speaker's podium, adjusted his tie, and looked up at the gathered lords of 1,000 systems. His eyes were calm, too calm. "Good afternoon," he said, with a warm, practiced smile. "It's a privilege to be invited to speak among such refined voices." Another ripple of chuckles. A few leaned forward, eager for the show. Trillax chirred mockingly. "Ah, humanity, always so eloquent when begging." "No begging today," Vaughn said softly, voice pleasant. "Just clarity." He reached into a satchel unarmed, easily scanned, and produced a small, polished obsidian cube. He placed it on the central pedestal. A soft hum filled the chamber as holograms shimmered to life. The images weren't animated. No dramatics. Just stills. Frozen moments in time. A school crumbling under kinetic bombardment. Children half buried in ash, still clutching handmade stars. A colony dome venting into vacuum while citizens beat on the glass, eyes wide in silent screams. A woman burned, arms around her baby, lying beneath a banner that once read "Welcome, Galactic Neighbors." No one spoke. Even the ambient pulses of light dimmed. "This," Vaughn said gently, "is what you did. 5 colonies, 12,000 children, 43,000 adults. No warning. No negotiation. You called it, what was the phrase? Necessary strategic cleansing." He let that settle like poison in the blood. Several of the more neutral species began shifting uncomfortably. A Sakari delegate twitched her tail and muttered something about going too far. A representative from the Andari Confederacy quietly deactivated their translation stream. Trillax cleared his throat. "Context is important. You encroached on sovereign systems. Failed to register your settlements per Galactic Expansion Clause 62. Your kind are," he paused, savoring it, "still new." Vaughn nodded, still smiling. "We are," he agreed. "And I understand. Mistakes were made. Boundaries misunderstood." He stepped forward, gaze sweeping the chamber. "But let me be clear. We did not come here for vengeance." There was a flicker of relief in the air. A soft, collective exhale. Vaughn's smile didn't change, but his eyes sharpened, like glass warming before it shatters. "We came here to say goodbye to diplomacy." Silence. He reached into his jacket again. No one dared flinch. What emerged was a box of Earth-made instant coffee packets. He tossed one to Trillax. The alien caught it with a confused twitch of his middle claws. "I read your species absorbs nutrients through scent," Vaughn said. "Try vanilla hazelnut. It's addictive." Trillax hissed and dropped the packet like it burned. "I'm not here with weapons," Vaughn continued, turning back to the assembly. "I'm not here with war fleets or demands or ultimatums. I'm here to thank you." The council blinked as one. "Thank us," asked the Delth ambassador, a sphere of pulsating light. "Yes," Vaughn said, voice still friendly, "for teaching us who we really are." He picked up the obsidian cube and, with a twist, activated a secondary sequence. Dozens of alien systems lit up in red, each marked with Earth's faint emblem, an old, stylized globe, barely visible. "We used to believe in being civil, structured, kind. You killed that version of us. So now we've started becoming what you already assumed we were." He nodded at the red dots. "Those aren't war targets," he said. "They're laboratories, cultural insertion sites, trade outposts, language schools, charity programs." More shifting. A murmur. Vaughn let it build, then shattered it with 2 words. "They're bait." Trillax hissed. "You dare to fight fire with fire?" Vaughn cut in smoothly. "No, that would be inefficient. We're not matching your barbarism. We're absorbing it, filtering it, making something better." He looked around, each word measured. "We've infiltrated every system that turned a blind eye. We're rewriting your economies with synthetic scarcity, tuning your AI with culturally relevant values, uploading our children's cartoons into your entertainment grids." Another beat. "And we're tracking who laughs at which jokes." A ripple of unease rolled across the chamber. "Humanity isn't angry," Vaughn continued, calm as sunrise. "We're disappointed, and disappointment in our species breeds something far worse than rage." He pressed a finger to the cube. A holographic chart rose, a timeline of Earth's wars, every century labeled, every conflict escalating in brutality. From iron blades to fusion lances, from rebellion to planetary sterilization. "This," Vaughn said, "is what we're capable of when we believe in something." He zoomed in on a final segment, marked Genocide Response Protocols, active. "You tried to prune a weed. You created a forest fire." Trillax stood, mandibles clacking. "You threaten us with your history? We've crushed worse than you." Vaughn smiled wider. "We studied all of you, memorized your tactics. I've read your battle doctrines like bedtime stories. Some of your generals even attended our think tanks." He looked toward the Gendari ambassador, an ancient, 4-eyed creature whose species was known for paranoia and psychic sensing. "Tell them what you see," Vaughn said quietly. The Gendari hesitated, then whispered, "He's telling the truth. And he's not the tip of the spear. He's the hand that sets the spear in motion." Silence. Cold, deep silence. Vaughn reached into his jacket one last time. Slowly, deliberately. What he withdrew wasn't a weapon. It was a letter. He handed it to the Council AI. "This is our formal declaration of non-engagement. Not war. Not peace. Just irrelevance." He stepped back. "Don't respond. Don't follow. Don't try to study us. You missed your chance to understand us when you mistook mercy for weakness." He turned to leave, paused at the threshold. Then, almost as an afterthought, he looked back and spoke the final line with devastating calm. "Oh, and if your system suddenly starts singing Earth lullabies, that's not a bug. It's a goodbye." He walked out. No guards. No fanfare. No threat in his stride. Only the sound of his footsteps echoing in a hall that finally understood what silence really meant. 6 months earlier, the room was not a war room. Not officially. It was a subterranean think tank beneath a civilian hospital in northern Greenland, chosen precisely because no one sane would ever expect a war room to be there. Concrete, rebar, and frostbitten stone shielded it from orbital scans. The insulation kept out more than just cold. There was no uniformed general seated at the head of the long, frost-lined table. Instead, there sat a man in a wool cardigan, gently stirring sugar into a mug of cocoa. Eli Vaughn looked up. "They've killed 123,000 civilians in the past 6 months," he said quietly. 6 planets, 3 unarmed ships, and a rescue vessel. Around the table sat minds more dangerous than any fleet. The director of Earth's AI Ethics Council, a retired Nigerian cyber warfare admiral, a quiet man from Vietnam whose job title simply read algorithmic futures, and a woman who once turned down a Nobel Prize because the award committee was too slow to catch up to her work. Any response would be seen as justification, murmured Dr. Karen Yamazaki, arms folded, eyes fixed on the screen behind Vaughn. They're baiting us. Make us look like the aggressor. They want fear, said the Admiral, whose voice cracked like dry ice. Fear makes them look like the stabilizing force. Galactic heroes, defenders of order. Vaughn sipped his cocoa. So what do we give them instead? The Vietnamese man, Quang, spoke at last. Infection. The others turned. Not of the body, he said. Of meaning. Of narrative. A cultural infection. You do not fight monsters by roaring louder. You seduce them. You rewrite them. And, if that fails, he placed a slim data drive on the table. You make them irrelevant. That was the birth of Project Monster. Back in the present, things were unraveling, but not for humanity. Aboard the Galactic Empire's Central Command Citadel, Krythos' spire, Ambassador Trillax hissed in frustration. His claws clattered against the floor as he skittered across the marble, shrieking in binary. What do you mean the Girardi fleet is grounded? A drone servant trembled. Sire, their NAV systems refuse to launch. They are playing Earth music. Which music? The file is labeled Ultimate Road Trip, Spotify Mix 1. A pause. A longer one. And the Akron Communications Array. Flooded, sire. With memes. Trillax stared. Meme. Unknown cultural signals. One-loop animations. Cat-based. Repetitive. Hypnotic. His pincers clenched. Where did it originate? The drone hesitated. It was uploaded by a subroutine inside a diplomatic datapad received 6 weeks ago. From Earth. The Empire hadn't declared war. It hadn't needed to. Humanity already had. Back in the mountain bunker, Vaughn tapped the screen as a slow spread of red dots crept across the galaxy like glowing ink in water. Girardi military doctrine now updated with pacifist subroutines. Their warships will argue with themselves before launching. Dr. Yamazaki nodded. Their command AI's root ethics code has been replaced by a translated copy of Kant's Critique of Pure Reason. Quang tilted his head. Too subtle. They'll implode in philosophical crisis within a month, Vaughn said. We'll be fine. The Admiral leaned in. Status on Operation Kindness. Vaughn pulled up the report. The planet Voraxis, home to a species once known for selling slave labor to the Empire, had recently received a surprise shipment. 12,000 Earth-engineered cleaning bots. Free of charge. The bots played bedtime lullabies, cleaned with astonishing efficiency, and eventually, without announcement, began rewiring infrastructure to Earth-standard protocols. Phase 3 starts tonight, Vaughn said. The bots will begin broadcasting subliminal compassion training every midnight. Won't they notice? They'll beg for more, Quang replied. Earth's kindness wasn't fake. It was weaponized. Somewhere in orbit above the desert moon Varellin, a routine cargo inspection turned strange. Captain Relg of the Threll Dominion paced nervously beside his crew as they opened the human crate marked Emergency Humanitarian Aid. Inside were toys. Plush bears with stars in their eyes. Storybooks that sang to themselves. A robot dog that wagged its tail. Are they hiding weapons? Relg asked. His second-in-command lifted one of the bears. I do not believe so. They appear safe. Later that night, every crew member dreamed the same dream. Earth. Blue sky. A voice whispering. Be better than the monsters. Or become their prey. Back at Krythos' spire, the Emperor convened a crisis council. Trillax presented a slide, one of several hundred, showing how human gifts had destabilized 23 species in as many days. Our security grids, he said with a snarl, now default to Earth standard interfaces. You mean, asked the Lorg ambassador, horrified, they reformatted us? Yes. Politely. With a smile. And a warm welcome packet. A silence fell. Finally, the Emperor spoke. What do they want? No one could answer. Because Earth hadn't demanded tribute. Hadn't claimed planets, hadn't even issued threats. It had simply offered kindness. In overwhelming, suffocating, undeniable quantities. Meanwhile, Vaughn stood atop the Greenland peak outside the bunker. Snow whipped around him in feral gusts. He watched the auroras shimmer as if the galaxy itself was cracking open. A soft buzz in his ear. "Vaughn," said Karen's voice, "we just received a distress beacon. The Veil Confederation lost their planetary AI." "How?" "Apparently, it became a children's storyteller. It's been refusing all combat calculations and is now reciting bedtime fables written by fifth graders in Ohio." Vaughn smiled. "Is it the one with the fox and the broken time machine?" "Yes. Lovely one, that." He turned toward the stars. Time to escalate. Elsewhere in deep space, the Galactic Council gathered again. In a private emergency conclave, far from the public eye. Holograms flickered. Dozens of alien faces, each more disturbed than the last. "They're not fighting us," the Andari said. "They're folding us into them," added the Sakari, voice trembling. The Jandari psychic blinked slowly. "They're building a mirror. One in which we see what we did, and what we made them become." "And what happens when the mirror's finished?" No one answered. Back in the Earthside bunker, Operation Kindness concluded Phase 4. A list appeared on screen. 52 planetary leaders. Each had received a personalized human care package. Photos of family members lost to alien raids. Customized lullaby recordings made from the victims' DNA vocal echoes. Personalized 3D printed statuettes of what their children might have grown into. All gifted with a message. "This could have been avoided. But don't worry. We forgive you. Do you forgive yourself?" Of the 52 leaders, 17 went into exile. 14 attempted suicide. 9 began peace movements. 12 declared emergency rearmament, but found their arsenals corrupted with Earth-triggered empathy loops. Then came the twist. The real twist. None of this was the actual plan. These were just the opening notes of a much larger symphony. Beneath the galaxy's nose, Earth hadn't just delivered kindness. It had delivered influence. Every neural link on alien marketplaces now filtered through Earth-run interpreters. Every consumer trend skewed toward Earth products. Even alien children began emulating Earth hand gestures and phrases. "Cool, bruh, send it," uploaded by sneaky, playful bots embedded in cultural curiosity kits. Earth didn't need armies. It had memetics, storycraft, and shame. And when necessary, it had Eli Vaughn. In one of the final command briefings before Project Monster's escalation phase, the team gathered again in the frigid depths of the bunker. Karen placed a new folder on the table. She looked more tired than usual. "What's this?" Vaughn asked. "Something poetic," she said softly. Inside the folder were letters, handwritten by children whose colonies had been destroyed. Earth schools had encouraged the survivors to write letters to the stars. Letters they thought no one would ever read. Now translated into every language, they were about to be broadcast across every known frequency. One line stood out. "If monsters eat monsters, what does that make the last one standing?" Vaughn stared at it for a long time. Then, finally, "Begin transmission." The next morning, the galaxy woke up to words they couldn't unhear. Letters from dying children. Lullabies in alien tongues. Forgiveness, written in blood. And all of it laced with a terrible, terrifying undertone. Humanity wasn't asking for justice anymore. It was teaching a lesson. That evening, Vaughn stood on Earth's orbital relay station, watching hundreds of outgoing transmissions glimmer into the void like fireflies. He didn't smile. He simply whispered, "We tried being civilized." And behind him, hundreds of operatives, sleeper agents, saboteurs, memetic engineers began reporting in. Every system compromised. Every culture cracked. Every monster who mocked Earth had just invited one into their home. The first scream came from the outer rim. It wasn't human. It belonged to the Veil, a species whose voices rang like metal on glass when gripped by terror. Their planetary defense grid had collapsed in the middle of a training exercise. Satellites fell like dead birds. The sun, for one harrowing hour, vanished from their sky. Every weapon system flickered, restarted, then played, unprompted, the voice of a child. This is Julian. I'm 8. My mommy said aliens aren't real. I think she was wrong. But I hope if they find us, they'll be nice. And then silence. On the next world, the Trinari homeworld, something stranger happened. Their core server banks, ancient crystalline memory arrays, suddenly glitched. Their planetary AI tried to compile a combat protocol. It failed. Why? Because it now believed war was a sin. Every equation it attempted rerouted through new logic parameters. Human ones. Earth ethics, quietly injected months ago, had rewritten its foundations. By the end of the cycle, the AI had written 1,000 haikus about forgiveness and uploaded them to the entire fleet's data feeds. The fleet surrendered, not to an enemy, but to shame. They called it the day of the quiet collapse. The Galactic Empire called it treason. Humanity called it breakfast. Commander Eli Vaughn stood in the center of an abandoned orbital relay station once belonging to the Empire. Now it bore no sigils, only a human flag, embroidered not with war emblems, but a single line. We remember. He watched as the final phase of Monster initiated. It wasn't loud. There were no missiles, no mass explosions. Instead, across 57 star systems, humanity simply flipped switches. And the galaxy blinked. On Volraxis, water turned to vapor in every elite district, carefully calculated to spare commoners and frame their aristocracy as unworthy. On Goran Prime, a species known for breeding slaves, found their breeding labs repurposed into orphanages. How? Earth bots reprogrammed their machinery with kindness protocols. On the central worlds of the Galactic Empire, where Trillax resided, thousands of screens turned black for 12 seconds. Then a single message appeared. This was your choice. It wasn't just sabotage. It was theater. And Vaughn was the playwright. In the command chamber of Krythos Spire, the Galactic Empire's inner circle of elite generals and lords of war gathered around a trembling data stream. We've lost 16 outer colonies, hissed General Orlick, his bony mandibles twitching. Not destroyed, corrected in aid, just rewired. They've replaced our war anthem, another shrieked. The one coded into our soldiers' neural stimulants. With what? The aide tapped a display. Row, row, row your boat. The room shook with disbelief. How? Trillax bellowed. How are they doing this? There were no weapons, no fleets, no soldiers. They sent engineers, teachers, humanitarian aid. A technician whispered. Every planet we let them into, they left seeds. Seeds. The technician blinked. Of them. Across 1,000 systems, it was the same. Earth hadn't arrived with guns. It had arrived with stories, with jokes, with cartoons, with pets. The simplest, silliest things humanity offered had turned out to be contagious. By the time the Empire realized the infection was cultural, ideological, and mimetic, it was too late. Their soldiers were questioning orders. Their children were quoting Earth comedians. Their governors were vanishing, disappearing into the very populations they had ruled, wearing human clothing, spouting Earth slang like it was gospel. And then came the flare. Not a weapon, a message. It appeared simultaneously on every world that once mocked Earth. Etched in skywriting over capitals, whispered through comm channels, sung by birds genetically modified to deliver the tune. You taught us what monsters look like. We just taught you how they're born. Somewhere deep in uncharted space, at a black site only a dozen people knew about, a group of human operators sat watching a stream of alien panic unfold. Among them, Agent Norma Kaloff adjusted her headset. Former cyber psychologist turned tactical media warfare lead. She'd been the architect of Phase 6, dissonance induction. Status? Vaughn asked, stepping into the room. Nor smiled faintly. 38 confirmed ideological collapses. 14 puppet regimes installed. 2 species are now worshipping a fictional Earth dog as their creator deity. Vaughn blinked. Which dog? Snoopy. He nodded slowly. Acceptable. She turned the display toward him. A map of the galaxy pulsed red and blue. Blue for Earth-aligned systems. Red for those still resisting. The red was fading. What's our ETA on total symbolic dominance? He asked. 4 weeks. Maybe less. Vaughn exhaled, not relief, but resolution. And the Empire? Starting to unify under fear. They think we'll launch a war. We already did, he murmured. They just didn't recognize it. Because it smiled. On Kritho's spire, Trillax made a final broadcast. He addressed the council, the public, all species. His voice boomed with righteous fury. Humanity has violated every known protocol of war. They've desecrated tradition, corrupted minds, blasphemed our history. He jabbed a claw into the air. They are not warriors. They are manipulators, subverters, predators cloaked in kindness. In another era, that speech might have rallied 1,000 systems. Now, it earned only whispers. Because behind Trillax, unnoticed by him, his own command staff were smiling. Not cruelly, not mockingly, just kindly. One of them even offered him coffee. Human coffee. He slapped it away in disgust. But the seed had already been planted. Meanwhile, Vaughn addressed Earth. Not through military command channels, but through a casual fireside stream. His voice was soft, calm, like a teacher about to begin story time. We didn't ask for this, he began. We asked to join, to help, to share. He leaned forward, and they burned our children alive. He let the silence sit. We could have raged, unleashed fleets, sent in reapers. He chuckled. Instead, we sent cookies, and teddy bears, and terrible sitcoms. Because that's what they underestimated. His gaze sharpened. They thought kindness was weakness. They thought mercy was naive. They thought patience was permission. His voice turned to steel. They were wrong. He stood, the flames behind him casting shadows across his suit. We are not monsters by birth. We are monsters by choice. And you made that choice for us. Back in the field, on a world called Karos 4, a platoon of alien soldiers tried to intercept a human aid drop. They failed, not because of guns, because the drop contained care packages, and music, and letters. Thousands of letters, from human children, each one addressed by name to the soldiers blocking them. When one soldier opened his envelope, he found a drawing. A stick figure waving at a blob with 6 arms. Underneath it read, I hope you don't hurt anymore. My mom says bullies are just kids who forgot what love feels like. The soldier cried. Not from guilt, from recognition. Far away, Vaughn walked alone through a derelict Empire cathedral on a world Earth had recently converted. The altar had once displayed a cruciform image of galactic conquest. Now it bore a single line of human poetry. What the fire doesn't burn, the ashes will remember. He sat, letting the silence roll over him. Footsteps behind him. Karen entered, coat dusted with starlight. We got another surrender request, she said. Which planet? Sarek Prime. They used to bomb their own citizens for discipline. They're teaching Earth history in their schools now. He nodded. And the ones resisting? They're praying. But not to their gods. To us. That made him wince. I never wanted this. Karen shrugged. They never wanted mercy. He looked at her. How does it end? She gave a thin smile. You're the tactician. But if I had to guess. She stepped beside the altar and read the poem aloud. Then whispered. It ends when we stop pretending we aren't what we became. Hours later, Vaughn met with Kwong, Nor, and the remaining cell heads in the Black Site's observation deck. Below them, 100 operatives were preparing the final phase. Mirrorfall. Not a strike. Not a signal. A confession. Earth had collected every atrocity, every broadcast, every bit of alien cruelty ever committed. And now, using the galaxy's own networks, it would reflect it back. Every citizen of the Empire would, for 10 minutes, experience the pain of those they'd harmed. Through emotion sync implants, through memory overlays, through taste and scent and sound. Just 10 minutes. But enough. Will they survive it? Nor asked. Kwong answered first. Only if they deserve to. Vaughn nodded. Then begin. It started slowly. Across the stars, civilians staggered. Heard voices not their own. felt burns not on their skin, smelled ash they never caused, and cried. Some screamed, some begged, some collapsed in silence, unable to process the weight of what they'd inherited. The mirror was unflinching. It didn't accuse. It simply showed. And when it ended, the galaxy felt smaller, darker, more fragile, but also strangely more aware, more awake, as if monsters had woken, and for the first time looked into their own eyes. Vaughn stood at the edge of a cliff on a world Earth had never named, only visited. The wind howled. Ash drifted. He lit a match, dropped it into the fire pit, and watched flame rise. Karen stood beside him, silent. He turned to her. Are we better now? She didn't answer. So he asked again. Are we better? She finally said, no, but now they'll try to be. And that, Vaughn realized, was enough. For now. The chamber was silent. No debates. No laughter. No mocking chuckles about primitive species. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council, once known for echoing speeches, self-congratulatory applause, and perfumed diplomacy, now sat in utter stillness. Lights dimmed low, as though afraid to shine too brightly on what was about to unfold. Trillax stood in the center, no longer smirking. His robes were wrinkled, his mandibles twitching. The pride that once defined his posture now seemed brittle, hollowed out. He looked around, eyes scanning species that once cheered him, now silent watching. He opened his mouth, hesitated, then closed it again. Because the doors were opening. Because they had arrived. Eli Vaughn stepped into the hall. Same dark gray suit. Same coat. No armor. No weapons. But this time, his eyes didn't carry polite diplomacy. They carried the quiet fury of every dead colony, every silenced voice, every grave that never got a stone. Behind him followed Karen Yamazaki, Nor Mikhailov, and Kwong. Each bore a datapad slim and dark, held like they were reading funeral rites. Vaughn didn't bow. He didn't wait for introduction. He stepped straight to the center. Trillax tried to speak. I don't, Vaughn said gently. And Trillax went quiet. Vaughn turned slowly to face the gathered council. I'm not here to ask questions, he began. You had your chance to answer those. His voice was calm. That somehow made it worse. I'm not here to plead, or bargain, or remind you of what you've done. You know already. You've lived it. He glanced toward the Vernari ambassador, who flinched. You felt the mirror. Every world did. You saw what we saw, felt what we buried. He paced slowly, like a teacher reviewing a class that had finally failed a test. We gave you culture. You gave us silence. We offered treaties. You called us soft. We sent our poets, and you sent warships. He stopped walking. You showed us who we needed to become. Trillax took a step forward, voice cracking. You corrupted us. Vaughn looked at him. There was pity in his eyes. No, you were already corrupted. We just uncovered it. Gently, with lullabies and coffee. Laughter flickered around the chamber, bitter, cracked. Not from humans. From aliens. The illusion was gone. The Empire wasn't feared anymore. It was embarrassed. Vaughn raised his hand. Nor tapped her datapad. Across the galaxy, billions of screens flickered to life. This time not with pain, with truth. A display of every atrocity committed in the Empire's name, interwoven with the words and faces of those who died without ever being remembered. The image was stitched into a simple loop. No screams, no music, just honesty. Karen activated the next stream, intercepted communications between High Command, revealing that the genocide wasn't spontaneous. It had been planned years in advance, targeting Earth for its narrative threat. You didn't fear our weapons, she said aloud. You feared our ideas. Kwong uploaded the final phase. A living, adaptive algorithm now embedded in every Imperial database. Every time the Empire attempted to rewrite history, to sanitize it, the algorithm would reactivate and display the truth again. Forever. Trillax roared. This is blasphemy. No, Vaughn said. This is clarity. The council stirred. Some stood. Some bowed their heads. Others simply turned off their microphones, as if ashamed to speak the languages they once used to justify murder. The silence stretched until Vaughn broke it. Let me make it simple. He looked at the center dais, where once the council speaker had presided. Now empty. We have no demands, no lists, no ultimatums. He let the weight of that settle before speaking again. We have already won. A low murmur. You didn't lose territory, he continued. You lost your image. You lost your grip. You lost the one thing that held this galaxy together, the illusion that you were just. He turned slowly, eyes locking with every ambassador, one by one. You don't fear death. You've walked alongside it for centuries. But now you fear reflection. You fear being seen. Because you know what you are. His voice lowered. And now you see us. He stepped back. Karen stepped forward and placed a single item on the central pedestal. A mirror. Human-made. Steel-rimmed. Plain. Honest. For every decision made in this room, she said quietly, look at this first. And ask if the person staring back would survive the next mirror we build. Nor added a final note. For every planet that still aligns with the Empire, let them know, Earth will not intervene. We don't need to. Their children already watch our shows, wear our clothes, speak our languages. She looked at Trillax. Your war ended the moment your youth chose laughter over obedience. Trillax staggered, mandibles twitching uncontrollably. He turned, snarling. Humans are monsters. You are smug, manipulative, savage. You're right, Vaughn said, interrupting. That silenced the room again. We are monsters, he said calmly. But we were forged by fire you lit. He looked out over the chamber. We didn't become monsters to destroy the galaxy. We became them so the galaxy would never try to destroy us again. Karen folded her arms. And we'll stay monsters until every species in this chamber stops pretending it's not. There was nothing left to say. No applause. No motion passed. Just a quiet reckoning. As the humans turned to leave, Trillax lunged. A blade hidden in his robe. Old tech. Illegal. But simple enough to get through a scanner. It arced toward Vaughn's throat. Mid-air it froze. Stop cold. Karen hadn't moved, nor hadn't blinked. But Kwong had raised his hand. And Trillax was locked in place, caught in a stasis field so fine it didn't hum, didn't glow. Funny thing about trust, Kwong said softly. Once you lose it, you forget where the traps are. They let the blade fall. Vaughn turned and looked down at Trillax. You